Hi everyone, it's Allie and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be using these super cute Fairytale Unicorns by Sweet November Stamps. Let's get started with some Copic coloring. We are going to start by stamping our image down with a Memento, rich brown cocoa ink, and we're going to start with our darkest brown or neutral marker first. All I'm doing here is basically mapping out where all of my darkest shadow lines are. So I'm just taking that Copic brown marker and almost touching that outer line and just adding a little thickness of a line above that. So anywhere where there's a shadow, we're going to go over those areas. By doing this, not only am I darkening that line in case the ink hasn't thoroughly applied itself to the paper, but we're also starting that shadow. I'm going to finish under the chin, across the nose, and we're going to come back to those eyes at the very end. The ink did not transfer too well to those, so we're going to fix that later. We're going to come in with our medium tone this time, and for this color I take it and I drag it across that darker brown, and basically I make that darker brown wet and I pull it a little farther up, darkening the areas where we want our shadow. And I'm not taking it out too far, I'm just making it the width of that brush tip. Light touch going over that dark ink and widening that line. Very, very simple. We want our unicorn to be fairly light in color, so therefore we're not going in with very, very thick lines of our dark and our medium tone. Gently just brushing everything over top. And I have forgotten her left ear and her unicorn horn, so we'll come back to that eventually. I'm going to go on the inside of the ear with that medium tone and down the side of the face. And don't forget to kind of go around those eyes, because our eyes are deep set, so they're going to be a little bit more in shadow. We're going to bring in one more color of Copic to finish her off. This is our lightest Copic color, and I'm basically spreading that brown out. I'm making these lines a lot thicker, and we're just going to accentuate anywhere where we have shadow. So underneath her belly and that far leg is going to be in complete Copic coloring this time, and get into all those little details. We're going to go right over her ears, down the side of her face and her nose, and just finishing off all those shadows. Now I figured out that I do want to blend it a little bit more, so I've gone with a very, very, very light YR marker this time, and I'm just blending the whole entire surface out. And that just takes that previous light color and blends it out even more into the image. It just makes her look a lot softer, and there's no blatant lines. We're going to add a little bit of warmth to the inside of her ears and her cheek, because she's got to have rosy cheeks for sure. Alright, going to go in and blend that cheek so that it's not like a stark pink line. And there we go, we finished off that far ear and her unicorn horn. We're going in with the exact same color palette as we initially started with. So very, very simple, and I put a few kind of lines on her horn to indicate that it's kind of like a corkscrew shape. And a little bit of pink to add some warmth into that, and then we're on to her mane. With hair, I generally start with a very, very deep dark and my darkest Copic marker, And again, we're going to map out exactly where we want all of the darkest lines to be. So wherever there's an inner fold or an area where things are overlapping or it's tucked behind something, this is where we're going to flick on that dark color. And I use a flicking motion to maintain that hair texture as well. So we're going to go in across her face, the main parts that are there. I find the hardest part to color is when something is curly. So you really have to kind of look at what the artist is telling you with their lines and just kind of imagine whether something is tucked behind, say her horn or her ear, and where all of those dark places would be. So we're going in with our mid-tone this time, and we're going to extend out from those dark places. We're still maintaining a highlight, so if you can see, we've left some white paper. At this point you can definitely leave that paper white, but we're going to go in with another lighter blue shade just to kind of take that brightness out. We're assuming that her hair is fairly dark, so it's not going to be completely shiny with a white highlight. We're going to blue that out basically. Again, I'm just trying to maintain those curvy lines to indicate curls. And we're going to take our lightest Copic this time and basically color in all of those white paper highlight marks that we've got. Very, very simple. You can basically just color these right in. And we don't want to forget the hair on her forehead. Again, very, very simple. Now, once you're at this point, you kind of have to look at it and say, do I have enough contrast? And I looked at it very closely and I thought, my darks aren't quite dark enough. So in this case, I went back and I grabbed an even darker blue-green this time. And I went in and added any color in those really, really dark shaded areas. I felt that it kind of needed a little bit more contrast just to make that texture of that hair pop. So I'm glad I did that because it made things a little bit more vivid where it's lighter. So we're going to use the same ink combination for her tail. And again, I find curvy and curly things very challenging. So I was kind of taking my time, flicking very short flicks this time, trying to maintain that curvature. Again, this is the same dark marker that we started with initially on her mane. And we're doing exactly the same thing, mapping out any super dark shaded areas. Going in with our medium tone, and we're accentuating out from those dark lines out towards our highlights in our curly, curvy mane and tail. So doing exactly what we did on her head. And I'm trying to leave those white spaces because we still want to maintain a highlight on all of that hair. So again, this is our last and lightest blue, and just going over that medium tone so that it blends very well. And again, wanted a little bit more contrast, so I'm going in exactly the same order that I did for her mane, because then I know it matches. Because if I had started with the darkest color, the color would be slightly different. So I went in exactly the same order that I did the first time. And again, that contrast really helps make everything pop. And the last final thing that we want blue is our hooves. And I'm making this really easy. This is the lightest blue, the same blue that we used on her hair. And I'm going over the entire hoof. And then I'm going to use my Zero colorless blender, and I'm going to push the ink out a little bit. I thought they were a little bit too dark, so I went in to try and push a little bit of that light blue ink back into the paper and lighten one side. And I was happy with that. Now I went back with a colored pencil and we accentuated the brown of her eyes because it wasn't quite stamped thoroughly. So quite often I use my pencils to do this, to go into the details. And voila, our final card. Thanks for stopping by. Have a great day, guys.